G'day, Ben from Duck Plain Chicken here with kind of an extra video on this build series of the 1/12 scale power loader from Aliens. So this video is just about the figure painting. I didn't want to include it in the last video just because that video was getting too long. And there might be people out there not interested in the actual figure painting bit. Before I get started, I just want to point out that this is not a how-to video because I am not a very good figure painter. I recognise that. This is more just documenting my journey and trying to find the way that I can, paint figures so they look a bit better than what I've done in the past. So talking about the figure, they've got a reasonably good representation of the colours of what Ripley, what she looked like when she was sort of fighting the alien queen. So she's wearing these sort of blue pants and a grey t-shirt. Now the colours I'll be using for the pants, I'll be using Blue Angels blue, and it's going to be a bit dark this, so I'm going to lighten it up by going over it with a lighter shade, probably a bit of dry brushing, or maybe even with the airbrush, sort of a lighter colour dusted over. So I'll be using that with the blue. For a grey t-shirt, I'm going to go with dark ghost grey. And for a skin tones, I'm just going to use this flesh pink. I've actually already sort of painted the flesh, so if I bring Ripley over and show you the progress so far. So all I've done is sprayed everything with the Mr. Surfacer, and just to ensure that there's sort of no seams. The next thing I did was I put down the flesh tone, and I put that over the grey, and it means that it is not so vibrant as what it would be if I painted it sort of over white. And everything has just a little bit of a sort of a pallid tone to it, which kind of makes sense. I mean, it's not like Sigourney Weaver has very, very fair skin, but you would think about the character in space. You're not going to get a lot of sunlight, so it makes sense that the skin's sort of fair in colour. So all these pieces are sort of ready to go. The next thing I'm going to do is just spray the boots, spray them with white primer, because the boots themselves are sort of mainly white with a bit of blue and red detail. So I want to sort of paint them white, and then I'll mask them off, mask all the skin tone areas, and sort of go and do the blue and the grey for the t-shirt and the pants. Painted the pants the dark blue. I did do the shoes in just SMS white primer. Obviously I'll be hand painting the details on those. As far as the t-shirt that she's wearing, I painted in the grey, and again it's sort of a bit darker than what I want the final result to be, so I'll be going over that with some other paint. The first thing I want to do is work on the face. I sort of really want to get that right. I think I can get the clothes and everything looking fairly convincing, but the face is something that I really kind of struggle with. So the first thing that I've done is I've used the obviously I've coated it in the SMS flesh for the face, and then I kind of masked it off with blue tack, and then I painted the hair black, and I used SMS camo black. You can sort of see I've missed a few bits in there, but that's alright. I can touch that up just with a brush. Okay, so as far as the technique that I want to use, I want to try something different this time. And what I'm going to be using is basically oil paint. So this is the oil brusher flesh tone set from Ammo by Big, and it comes with 3 oil brushes. If you haven't seen these products before, it's just a different way of storing oil paint. I mean, you buy it in a tube, it's still the same sort of thing. So this comes with Sunny Flesh, Basic Flesh, and Light Flesh. So I think sort of looking at these colours, I should be able to get something that's reasonably convincing. Now, Sigourney Weaver has a reasonably sort of pale complexion in the movie, so it's not like she's well tanned. So I think these paints might be, might work reasonably well. So I've got just a tile here, palette that I use. And I think what I'll do is I'll start with the sort of shadow areas. So for this, it'll probably be the, what's it called, the sunny flesh, I think. We'll try giving that a shot. Now, you can use any sort of oil paints for this process. You don't have to use these oil brushes, just as long as they're good quality oil paints. Some of the cheaper oil paints tend to be sort of full of the binder and not a lot of fine pigment, so just make sure they're good quality ones. Yeah. Alright, so let's have a look at what this stuff is. I've never actually opened these before, so I've got no idea what these are like. I know they come with this applicator thing that makes it a bit easy to use, so I'm going to put a little bit on my palette. The great thing about oils is you can wet blend them. So I've always struggled with doing that with acrylics, water-based acrylics in the past. Okay, the other thing I'm going to use is some enamel paint thinner. So this is just the Tamiya stuff. So I'm going to take a little bit of that and put it on my palette. Alright, now as far as the brush I'm going to use, this is actually number 6 round. So this one's a bit beaten up, probably a bit tired, probably need to get another one. But it can hold plenty of paint, and for this particular purpose I think it'll work reasonably well. So what I'm going to do is just sort of thin this flesh colour right down. I almost want it sort of just a really thin wash. Okay, so let's see how this looks when I get it in the recesses. Now I can see she's got just a few blemishes on her face, which it's like bits of dust or something that have caught under there. Now I think I might have gone a little bit too thin. So I can go in just with a cotton bud. I'm going to see if I can clean this up a little bit with just with a sanding stick, because I've got, you can see those couple of bits of stuff have obviously got caught under the paint. I'm going to try and lightly sand that. Look at that, like magic, they're gone. Because although she does have you know, in the film she does have a dirty face, you know, she's just gone sort of into the Queen's den and done a whole lot of damage, and you know, trying to sort of survive that. So she is a bit dirty, but she hasn't got big bits of dust stuck under her skin. Like I said at the start, you know, this is not something that I'm well practiced in. So I do kind of struggle with figure painting. I'll try and focus this a bit. What I want to do is concentrate on all the areas where you would naturally see sort of shadows, so in the eyes, under the nose, and then I can use a cotton bud to just gently brush off areas that I've accidentally gone over to keep those sort of highlights. We see at least a little bit of sort of shadow in there. Actually, seeing it on camera is good because the camera tends to overemphasize the shadow areas a bit, and you know, the look I'm going for here is not that sort of high contrast what you do on miniatures or something like that. What I'm trying to get is something that's a bit more realistic. Alright, let's have a look at what's this one. This is basic flesh, so let's give that a shot and see what that looks like. I'll try and get some of that in the shadows too. The other thing I want to do is try something different with the eyes. So previously I've sort of hand painted eyes in. Still going to try something a bit different. I think I may actually need to go something a bit darker. What I should be able to do is mix it with this stuff, which is another really high quality oil paint specifically for model painting, 502 Abteilung, and I'll be using ABT093 Earth. Now I think this company actually does a set of flesh colours, so I might have to look into those. If this works out, you know, using oil paints for the flesh tones, I might have to invest in getting an oil colour set. So I've just got a little bit of brown. I'm going to take a little bit of that and mix it in. That might be a bit too much. Unlike unlike using acrylics, I don't need to worry about a wet palette or anything like that. I can just so I'm using a bit of basic flesh here. I'm going to try and mix that in. There we go, that's sort of what I'm after, that sort of colour. Yeah, don't have to worry about a wet palette because this stuff just does not dry very quickly at all. It's kind of one of the problems too of using oil paints, is it takes a while to dry. Just a little bit around the nose, around the eyes. Okay, so that's definitely way too much. But I'm kind of liking the way that's let's look at it at the moment. I don't know if it looks like Sigourney though. Just trying to darken up the lips. Yeah. I may have to introduce maybe another colour. Alright. So it's definitely pretty subtle. So this is the photo that I'm using for reference. You know, obviously this is sort of before she goes into battle with the Queen, but it gives a really good idea of sort of her, the structure of her face and where you would sort of expect to see a bit of shading. So she actually has really quite okay, so this is the photo that I'm sort of using, or the screenshot I'm using as reference for when she's fighting the Queen. Now, she actually has sort of dark shadows under her eyes, which is understandable. None of them have slept, you know, with what's going on. So, and she also has these red marks, almost like bruises on her cheeks. So I've got to introduce some darker colour for just around her eyes. Now, unfortunately, I don't have black, which would have been better, but what I do have is it's another 502 Abteilung. This is Ancient Greece, so it's the darkest colour I've got, but I think it'll be fine for just some subtle, you know, dark rings around the eyes. I do want to try and keep it reasonably subtle. And because I've used lacquer-based paints, the oils won't affect the underlying paint. So if I make a mistake, I can rub it off. I'm trying to build it up sort of in layers and trying to blend it as I go. How successful that is, I don't know at this stage. It's not too bad. I don't think it's sort of darkening up the eye area a bit more. Do the same thing sort of under the nose. And the lips are actually quite red, which is going to be a bit of a problem for me because I don't actually have any oil colour that's sort of reddish. So I may have to, once this is dry, I may have to go in with some acrylics over the top of it. But let's see, what do we got? This basic flesh. Yeah, I don't think it's red enough. So yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with the lips. Do that later on. But I think it's actually working. Like I said before, you got to remember at this scale you don't want it to sort of look super contrasty like you would do for a miniature. It's sort of a bit too much. Alright, let's have a look at this light flesh. Give it a shake. Let's see how this looks. Might see if we can bring up a few highlights. Yeah, so that looks very light. Very light. Alright, may have to turn that down a little bit. And so just sort of on the bridge of her nose. Just a little bit on the top of her chin there. Around the top of her cheeks. Yeah, it's still pretty subtle. But the more I look at it, the less I think it looks like Sigourney. I don't know. I guess they tried, but I think that jaw is a bit too forward. Looks like she has an underbite, and I don't think Sigourney Weaver has that. So I don't know. But anyway, all right. So I think what I need to do is sort of let that dry, and the next step is, really to work up some of those details, like the bruising around the side of her cheeks. Try to make it look like bruising as opposed to, she's got rouge on her cheeks or something like that. And also her lips, so bring in a bit of red. I'll put on my palette a little bit of reddish black and shadow flesh. So I'm going to start with the shadow flesh, and I've just watered it down substantially here on the palette. Let's see if we can use it as a bit of a glaze. Just pretty subtle Yeah. And just try and keep building up those layers until I sort of get it to a colour that I want. It's actually a bit of a pity they didn't have her showing some teeth in the sculpt. Yeah, like in this picture here. I mean, this is kind of very just stoic, which of course is not what she was like in the scene where she was fighting the Queen. Alright, so let's see if we can start getting some sort of colour in the cheeks a little bit. So this goes. So it's starting to look like rouge on her lips, so rouge on her cheeks there. So we need to darken that up quick, make it sort of look more like a bit of ugly bruising. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work, but if it doesn't, it's alright. I should be able to remove it without affecting the underlying paint. Alright, let's see if we get some. Some more purplish hues in here. Yeah, it's starting to sort of look a bit more like clown makeup now, so I might have to rethink my tactics. So yeah, that look sort of a bit not really so much bruising, is it? Needs to be darkened up quite a bit. Just want to build it up a little bit at a time. Yeah, it definitely looks like a poor makeup job, doesn't it? So I think what I'll do is get some airbrush thinner. You're joining me on my adventure of learning how to do this stuff. And so far, as you can see, I'm struggling a little bit. This would have been easier to do with oils. I'm just working my way around with the thinner to try and push that acrylic around to where I want it. I may have to abandon the idea altogether if it looks, if it just looks like she's sort of got some weird makeup on. So I've made it just a little bit more blotchy, so it's a little bit less like makeup. There's still some areas there that I want to remove some of the purple. I want to sort of get it off her cheeks and more on the top of the yeah, sort of more under her eye, I guess, a little bit more. So I'm going to start on the whites of the eyes, and for that I'm going to be using Play-Doh Mecha Colour Off-White. Yeah, let's see if I can try and get this in on her eyes properly. And for the whites of the eyes, I just do the sort of middle. The reason for that is because on the edges, you know, they're not going to be as white. So there we have Zombie Ripley. So one of the things that I've always struggled with is doing eyes on figures. I don't think that's uncommon. A lot of people find that difficult. So instead of trying to paint them in, I'm going to try using these, which are Human Iris Eyeball decals by Archer. Now I heard a rumour somewhere that this company doesn't close down, so I'm not sure if these are still available. But they're essentially water slide decals for eyeballs, which is fantastic. Made for people like me. And the other thing is they also sort of give an indication of, you know, how to sort of cut the cut it so that it actually looks believable. So of course we don't want the whole round of the eye because that will look quite strange, so we need to sort of cut it towards the top. Boy, these are tiny. Alright, let's see if we get this one in place. Probably better than what I could do if I was painting it. Okay, let's see if I can find this other one. So, you know, to give you an idea how tiny these decals are, they are minuscule. And the more I look at this sculpt of Sigourney Weaver's face, the more I realise they've messed up with the chin. I think that's the biggest problem. The rest of it's not too bad, but to me anyway, the chin is too forward. She has a strong jaw, but she doesn't have an underbite like what they've sculpted. Right, I think I need to do a bit more detail around her eyes, but I actually think, despite all the messing around, definitely looks better than if I'd tried to paint them. At least they're straight. So I'm going to call that a win. And I think, yeah, I've tried using the smaller ones in the past, but they're just so minuscule that it makes it incredibly difficult. But I think at this 1/12 scale are actually reasonable. So if you can get your hands on, yeah, these Archer human iris eyeball decals, yeah, they're worth a try. Fiddly, you have to sort of cut them to the shape you need, but they do work. The next step is for me to do some details around her eyes. So I've got the decals in place, but of course she needs some sort of eyeliner. I'm going to do her eyebrows. So for that I'm going to use a combination of Vallejo Mecha Color Brown and also some pure black. A little bit of detail around her eyes. It's not particularly clean, but it gives the impression of eyes, I think. So the next step is to sort of do her eyebrows, and for that I'm just going to be using very sort of fine kind of brush strokes. And now she looks as though she has male eyebrows. I think the reason that that doesn't look great is because I've gone too dark. So I'm going to use some airbrush thinner and try and knock it back a bit. That's a little bit better. Okay, so I've got her eyebrows there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is take a bit of this sort of darker colour that I've created here, thin it right down, try and just give her a little bit more definition under her eyebrows. She's not looking like a clown, which is the main thing. While I'm here, I'm going to try and touch up all these areas around her hair. Alright, okay. Yeah, so you can see how far her chin sort of juts out. I think that's kind of why her likeness isn't that great. I don't know. Okay, so to work on the hair, I'm going to start with I guess a glaze of this brown, just so that your hair's not so black. Flat brush for this process, and water it down quite a bit, because I do just want it to be a glaze. I want it to sort of tint the hair. I don't want it to make it brown, and I think I need some black in there as well. Yeah, let's try the skin. Make it lovely messy, aren't we? Wow, that black is definitely intense. That's a bit better. That's the sort of colour I'm after. Alright, so hair now has a bit more of a brown look to it. And the next thing is just to sort of get some highlights in there. So for the highlights, I'm actually going to start off with this Vallejo Mecha Color Grey Z, and then I'll go over it with a little bit of white. I'm not trying to make her hair grey, I'm trying to just sort of pick out some highlights. Alright, I think I need to go in there with some of the airbrush thinner, just to clean some of that up. Some of them are a bit too much, some of these highlights. So you really want to sort of try and keep them as thin as possible. And we are talking about hair here. We are not talking about painting Gumby. Alright, there we go. A few sort of highlights in there. Her hair's coming out darker on camera than what it is in reality. In reality, it is a bit browner. Okay, so the next thing is to go in with something a bit lighter. So I'm going to use this off-white, and I think I need to find an ultra-fine brush. Okay, so what's this? This is Army Painter War Game of the Psycho. This is a pretty fine brush, but it's what I need. So use some of this off-white. Suspecting the paint sort of drying a little bit on the brush. Not giving me as fine a stroke as I'd like. And so I'm sort of following the the high points of the hair wherever I can. Really want to try and make it so she doesn't look as though she has sort of a flat kind of Lego man haircut. I'm in danger here of sort of overdoing it, so she ends up looking as though she has grey hair, which of course is not the case. Alright. Actually, I think that's about as good as I'm going to get it, unfortunately. My problem is I tend to overwork figures, so I'm thinking I should back off now. I might look at it later and see if it needs any more work, but I think in this case I'm sort of just going to put it to the side and work on other parts of the figure. Alright, so I'm going to start on the rest of the skin tones and sort of get them sorted before I do the clothing. So just to give you a sort of I guess a sample of the difference between the skin tone I had originally and the effect of, you know, using oils over the top of it. So you can see her neck is a lot pinker, I guess. So I need to use some oils to tone that down a little bit. So I'll remove her head for a minute. And so again, I'm going to be using the oil brushes, Basic Flesh and Sunny Flesh. And so I'm just going to water this down a little bit with the thinner here. And sort of just start brushing it on. Kind of concentrating it, building it up in the areas where the head goes over the top, because that will be sort of the darkest area. Alright, so I'm just going to sort of get the head back on just to sort of compare it. And yeah, it's a bit more of a match. Okay, so I'll do the same thing with the hands here. A little bit darker just to bring out some of these sort of shadow areas. So I've got the Abteilung brown that I used before. And it's almost going on a bit like a glaze. It's sort of you know, tinting the paint. At the same time sort of settling in some of those crevices. So even though I'm sort of just starting out to use these oils, I do find them a lot easier to wet blend. So I think I might have found my sort of weapon of choice, I guess. Yes, yeah, look at that, it sort of looks pretty realistic. I kind of like that. Maybe not coming up that well on camera. For Ripley's t-shirt material, I'm going to use some Leo Mecha Color Light Grey mixed with a bit of the off-white, and then I might do the really high highlights with a sort of lighter blend of the two. I'm actually going to use a makeup brush for just dry brushing this on. These things have really soft bristles, so yeah, I tend to find they're really good for dry brushing. So I'm just going to mix this up. And of course the trick with dry brushing is to just get the smallest amount of paint on your brush and then brush most of it off. And then when you sort of work it over the surfaces, kind of pick up some of the highlights. So try and compare the two. You can see the difference between the top. Well, you can see the difference between the torso and the sleeve. So let's lighten it up a bit. And then I need to compare what it's going to look like with the rest of the t-shirt. So I reckon that'll be right. So I'll set that aside to dry, and then I can sort of start working on grubbing it up a little bit. So for this I'm going to use Mecha Color Blue Grey just to sort of lighten it up a little bit. Alright, so if you compare the right leg to the left, They're worlds apart. So as well as sort of lightening up the pants, it's also giving it, yeah, a lot more texture, which I'm a lot happier with. I mean, at this scale, you would see the texture in the materials. So I think the stippling has sort of really worked quite well. It was a really rough looking sort of jean material. Now it is still a bit shiny, so it's sort of yeah, it's probably not coming up as natural, but I think once it gets a matte coat on it to knock it back a bit, I think yeah, that'll make a huge difference. So I'm just going to paint up the watch, and it appears that the watch, at least the watch band, is black, the face is a dark colour, and then the bezel around it is silver. So I'm just going to use some pure black to do the band. And the rest of it I'll do using Vallejo Model Air Chrome. So I'm just going to set that aside, let that dry for a bit. Now for our shoes, there's a combination of red for the kind of inner tongue part and then blue for the straps. So for the red, I'm going to use this SZ Red, Vallejo Mecha colour, and I think I may have to darken it down. I might use a little bit of black just to dull it down a little bit. Alright, so for the blue, I'm going to use this Titan dark blue. Alright, I'm going to paint the rest of these off camera, but you get the idea of where I'm going. So looking at the final result of the pants, sometimes it makes a difference to sort of step away from a project for a while and come back and have a look at it again. And looking at the pants, I wasn't really happy with the result. So I ended up taking another colour and sort of spraying it over the top. So you can see I finished hand painting the Reeboks, but the pants I sort of went over with a lighter shade of blue, and it was actually a custom mix where I took sort of about 60% of Aggressor Blue, PL102, and then I took 20% of dark blue grey and 20% of light Grau. So between those three colours, I did add a bit of SMS thinner as well, and thinned it out and gave it sort of a light brushing. So when you sort of look at it up close, you can still see there's some of that sort of texture and some of that stippling that I did still coming through. So it's actually a really nice effect, but I actually think the colour, going back and having a look at the film, the colour's probably closer to the pants that she was wearing. So I've also finished the watch. So it's just a black band, black face with the silver bezel on it. I think this is about as good as it's going to get. So really the last thing I need to do is sort of do a bit of weathering and then give it a matte coat. So for the weathering, I'm going to use a combination of these Tamiya Weathering Master powders. So I'm going to use Oil Stain from set D, and I'm also going to use a bit of this green from set E just to see how that looks. I don't want to overdo it, even though she does sort of come across as being, yeah, somewhat dirty after her adventures with the Queen Alien. So I'm just going to take a bit of this stuff on the applicator and sort of just brush a bit here and there on her pants. I'll do a bit of this on the shoes as well, but you can see it's sort of just basically a little bit of subtle dirt that's found its way onto the pants. There we go, and I reckon that's about all I'm going to sort of do with that. Okay, so I'll put that one away. Actually, I might use that on her t-shirt as well. So just get a bit of dirt. I think that will, instead of using the green, I'm kind of happy with this oil stain colour. Okay, just a little bit sort of on her arms, just a hint of, you know, that she's been busy causing chaos. So I'll probably put a bit too much on her neck there, so I might just take a cotton bud and rub that back a bit. There we go. Right, I think that's suitably dirty enough. Don't want to sort of overdo it. Alright, now for the shoes, I think what I might do is actually use the grey. So we've got, from set E, we've got grey. At the moment, these Reeboks are way too clean. Now, of course, when she's getting into the loader, sort of showing Apone and Hicks what she can do, she's got very clean Reeboks on, but after going head to head with the Queen, of course, that's going to change substantially. It's still flaring out a bit on camera, but trust me, it's a lot dirtier than it's looking on camera. Let's see, maybe it's worth adding just a little bit of green as well. So take this one, just a bit of variation. I've just noticed this little detail here, and also the clasp on the belt here, that just needs to be silver, so I'll just paint that by hand off camera. And I think she's ready for a matte coat and ready to be put in the loader. Put a matte coat over Ripley, the Ripley figure, just using SMS Matte Clear, or Clear Matte, and yeah, it's come up pretty well. The proportions of this body, though, are a bit strange, and of course I've already spoken about the nature of the head sculpt. But I suspect they've probably done it that way just in order to get it to fit in the machine properly in the loader. So it's not really a good likeness of Sigourney Weaver, not just in the head but also the body as well. However, it's, you know, it's functional. I mean, it's not even much of a sort of, even though it's got sort of articulated, you know, knees and what have you, it's not even really much of an action figure. It really struggles to stand on its own 2 feet. So that's a, you know, bit of a problem, and the articulation is really quite limited. I guess it's sort of limited to, you know, what the loader is capable of doing. But anyway, the figure's now done, so I will now add this to the loader, and we can get some glamour shots done.